The great return of the hole in the ozone layer shows that it has no connection with freon, CFCs. Carbon dioxide does not have the slightest influence on the ozone hole, or the El Niño phenomenon. The El Niño phenomenon has existed since the Pliocene period, several million years ago. It occurs some years along the Peruvian coast. El Niño results from a periodic shift in atmospheric circulation, known as Wagner, which could depend on lunar cycles. At the same time, a swirling sea current forms over a few thousand kilometers. El Niño and the ozone hole can only result from disturbances linked to astronomy. What if Descartes was right with his whirlwinds? For Descartes, the stars are surrounded by whirlwinds. However, for a whirlwind to form, Hamilton's principle requires the presence of condensation. Descartes' whirlwinds therefore have a cause, the condensation of his medium of space in the stars. Today we would say that the ether is condensing into matter. The whirlwind of the sun causes the planets to rotate. The tangential speed of this whirlwind must, therefore, be proportional to the inverse of the square root of the distance from the sun. Unfortunately, these whirlwinds in perfect fluid have a tangential speed proportional to the inverse of the distance from the center of the well. This result is taken from the Lagrange equation, the energy equation. But then, there is a solution. If the particles in the ether are animated not only by linear Brownian motion, but also by angular momentum, then the principle of equipartition of energy exactly doubles the energy term in the Lagrange equation, whose solution is then very exactly a tangential speed proportional to the inverse of the square root of the distance to the center of the well. In application of Poincaré's theorem, the whirlwind concentrates in a plane, which is the main plane of galaxies, and the equatorial plane of stars and planets. On each side of this equatorial whirlwind, the ether also condenses, so that whirlwinds must appear, and so on up to the poles. The zones thus formed are separated by vortex cones, giving the zones alternating inverse rotations. This explains the zonal appearance of the planets. The ether causes the gases surrounding the planets to rotate. This is the case for Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. The zones formed by these gases themselves form gas vortices through friction at their interfaces, as can be seen up to the pole of Jupiter. Earth's ocean currents also have a distinctly zonal nature. The phenomenon is also indisputable for terrestrial winds, although it is less obvious. The rotation of the Sun on itself is essentially zonal. The inclinations of comet trajectories, relative to the equatorial plane of the Sun, have a zonal distribution. Retrograde comets are in the gaps in this distribution. The solar system has a zonal characteristic. The stars of the galaxies are concentrated in their main plane. Miller's measurements with the Michelson interferometer and Professor Allais' statistics showed that Michelson's experiment gives deviations linked to the respective positions of the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. A solution to these discrepancies is to take up Descartes' vortices. Since the Earth is driven by the Sun's whirlwind, Michelson's experiment could not show the Earth's rotation around the Sun. But the speed of condensation of ether in the Sun is, on the other hand, measured by the interferometer as confirmed by Miller's measurements. We can consider repeating Michelson's experiment in space. By rotating around the Sun in the opposite direction to the Earth, the Michelson interferometer will reveal a speed of 60 km per second, the double of the speed of the Earth. There have been climatic optima, in the past, that have marked history. The most famous have a periodicity of several hundred years, unrelated to that of El Nino, or that of the ozone hole. But in the absence of other known causes, we must think that all these climate disturbances must be linked to deformations of the Descartes whirlwinds, in the solar system, or in the galaxy. The West was marked, around the year 1000, by unprecedented economic and demographic development, the optimum of the Middle Ages. 2000 years ago, the beginning of the Roman Empire also experienced a climatic optimum. The great late Neolithic structures in the UK, such as Stonehenge, were built 4,000 years ago. The remarkable development of Babylon is contemporary with Stonehenge. These phenomena do not correspond to any known phenomena in the solar system. We must therefore think of a phenomenon linked to the galaxy modifying the Descartes whirlwinds in the solar system. Unlike the major climatic optima, which result from a phenomenon linked to the galaxy, the ozone hole and El Nino result from a phenomenon linked to the Sun and the Moon. In both cases the Descartes vortices are modified.